It has been a devastating season and mounting pressure on the Northland region under severe drought conditions, some of the worst that has been seen in a lifetime. We are joined now on the line by the Kaipara District Mayor, Dr. Jason Smith. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Kia ora, Sarah. Great to be here. Thank you.
I know you'll be a very busy man in fighting for the Northland region every day with the infrastructure money that has been helicoptered around. Is any of it starting to land, as of course rain doesn't seem to be landing?
Well, look, I'd say right now we actually need rain more than we need anything at all. But the infrastructure money, I can say that there's been a promise of some $35 million has been indicated as coming to Northland for water storage that will be able to be used for towns and for farming.
Okay, so we're talking, obviously the immediate need is for rain, and I'm sorry I can't immediately turn that on for you, Jason, but the situation has got so dire that even with a lot of rain, it won't recharge those aquifers very fast.
So yes, the challenge that we have, and in the part of Northland that I'm in, which is just on the north side of the Kaipara harbour, we've had 100 millimetres of rain since January, since Christmas, basically. So with only 100 millimetres of rain, what we've got is that most of the small farm ponds are dried up. Underground aquifers are starting to fail, and we are concerned about saltwater intrusion from the ocean hitting those aquifers. And also, very importantly, what's happening right now, because there's been so little rain, is that the bush, the kauri forest, is starting to die.
Wow. Now, obviously there's been a lot of drought payments from MPI and heading into the Hawke's Bay. Are you feeling left out in Northland, or are your farmers and growers being looked after just as much?
So, look, I'm really happy that the Hawke's Bay has had those important special funds for them. For us in Northland, we haven't had the same response and the same crisis, but our farmers can also put their hand up for that $5,000 per farm for advice. Of course, what the farmers are saying is that they want rain and they want projects on the ground. They don't need advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, feed and the processing backlog, especially with a lot of dairy farmers in Northland with cows going into that backlog, will not be helping a lot at all.
Yeah, so and there's been a bit of a perfect storm with the drought and then COVID and the works being on reduced capacity and there being less water being allowed for the meatworks and so on across several months now. That's created a perfect storm. We've worked our way back out of that now, but the challenges have been very, very real here, and it's not over yet.
What's it been like for the growers, avocado and kiwi fruit, and affecting the quality and yield?
So across the north, yields are down. So again, in the Kaipara part, the kumara harvest is down by 25 to 30% less than normal. So in the South Island, it may be very hard for you to get any kumara in the coming season. And of course, also the maize crop, and I'm actually a farmer myself, and our maize crop was less than we would have expected because of the drought. And also, here's an interesting thing. In the last week, I've heard of some contractors having to re-sow pasture crops, autumn sown pasture crops, because they'd germinated and then they've failed after they'd germinated because of the lack of rainfall. And so they're having to be replanted again. These are just costs and costs and costs for the farmers, as and yields dropping. It's very, very challenging.
What are some of those high-level conversations that you're having in terms of not waiting till we get into these crisis points with not only drought on our farms, but our infrastructure, our local regional infrastructure as well. Having long-term planning around this and not until getting to a point of breaking point.
Long-term planning is very, very critical for where we're at. And the drought that we're in right now, the bad news is, my read on it, is we're only about a third of the way through this critical drought. Some of the dam systems that we have now that feed Fonterra dairy factories and so on are actually going to take 2 years to refill to their normal levels. 2 years with the projected rainfall that we now have. And so one of the challenges that we have is that we need to be putting in place now urgently infrastructure, and the challenge is to get that moving fast so that we actually have water storage for next year and the year after. Because Northland, if it doesn't start raining, Northland will be in a very, very critical place.
How do you get on, Jason, with regards to the rate take in Northland, being able to fund this type of infrastructure from a local and regional council perspective, as opposed to from central government? I mean, we had David Cull, the president of the local government New Zealand, on Sarah's Country a wee while back when Cameron Baggery was putting a lot of pressure on regional and district councils to use their loan book to effectively to get us out of this. But in regions like Northland, I'd imagine it wouldn't be as abundant.
So it's very challenging. So in Northland, you have 4 councils. There are 3 district councils and 1 regional council. Each of those councils right now is setting their rates and building their annual plan for next year. And each of those councils has a different balance sheet against which it can borrow or not, or a depreciation schedule that it can leverage off or not. And so quite simply, we've got a challenge of a mixed bag of different levels of rates for different councils all across Northland. I'm getting to the answer to your question. I'm just explaining the scene. It's really complicated.
So where it would be interesting to ask as well is the 3 waters versus 4 waters and it falling under people's different balance sheets as well, when it could be one particular system.
Absolutely. It's very, very challenging because we have drainage systems in Kaipara District Council, for example. We have 29 drainage districts which have individual targeted rates, and they're to do with the district council, not the regional council. We've also got stop bank systems with more than 250 kilometres of seawalls that are keeping the salt water out, and they're not funded by the regional council either. And so we are looking through some of the government infrastructure funds for assistance with building up those stop banks and shoring them up in this current period right now, in the COVID period, if you like, where there's a whole heap of people who are needing jobs, and these are shovel-ready projects that are already resource consented, but that people have not been looking at, particularly in the past.
And the flow and effect of employment gain for Northland as well?
So again, looking at significant employment opportunities with plantings for sediment control around the Kaipara Harbour in particular, and also tree and vegetation removal from the sides of roads, looking at some of the forestry gangs or some of the other construction workers who may be being laid off from other parts of the country. So it's a very, very complex time with COVID, on top of people actually saying, if you like, that they can't pay their rates anymore, but actually central government saying you need your rates to help fund the activities that need to be happening, and we're just caught in this fascinating perfect storm.
Oh dear, and you're a very compassionate mayor and well loved in Kaipara. I know Dr. Jason Smith, the Kaipara District Council Mayor, having a challenging time in very unprecedented times with the drought in Northland.
This is Sarah's Country.